Welcome to the new Cyber Frontier, bringing you the latest news and initiatives that focus on the development of cybersecurity economics. You don't have to be a computer or cybersecurity expert to get plugged in. Your host brings it straightforward, asks the tough questions, and brings the cyber world to a level of understanding for everyone. You can find us on the web at www.newcyberfrontier.com. Now join our host as he introduces the topic for today's new Cyber Frontier.
All right, welcome back. I'm your host to an edition of Cyber Frontier, new Cyber Frontier, excuse me. I'm your host, Tim Montgomery, and today we're going to talk a little bit about how AI is coming into play for all of us, and just how fast is it evolving, and what are some of the, I guess whether this is good or bad type scenarios. My host today is Dr. Goro. He's the host also for this, and we've gotten into some conversations in the past, and of course with all of us, we trend in the business, we stay in the industry as specialists and SMEs, so I always try to bring some of the stuff we know and have talked about in our past of different conversations with different specialists and things of that nature. So welcome again, Dr. Gorog. How are you doing today?
Doing good, Tim.
Yeah. So as I said, we're talking about AI, artificial intelligence, and in my opinion, artificial intelligence is growing exponentially, and I think it's almost like a runaway. I think people are getting into it so fast, and they don't understand how it'll evolve. I remember the chief information officer, or the chief executive for Google, talking about their Gemini and how that AI was kind of rewriting itself on its own without them knowing. So, I mean, I can see where this could go, and I believe everybody probably has some perspective on it. But I also see how it can be an enhancement. Oftentimes, I do use this to assist me on enhancing some of the writing that I do from my own ideas that can support. Now, I wish AI would actually AI actually does the meeting minutes now in some of these applications. So I'm really bad at that stuff. So what's your take on it?
Well, my take. Everybody's talking about it.
Yeah.
Right. It's the biggest buzzword, as it seems like over the last couple of years, every new buzzword gets bigger than the last one. It just the way I think it's the new trend is to engage with the new buzzword very rapidly, and
Right.
don't get behind, because if you don't come on to the new buzzword, change all your technology to show how it meets the new buzzword, you're considered the old buzzword, which is outdated, so out of vogue. So it's more of a staying in vogue to be up with the latest buzzword as quick as possible. And I think that's what people have learned, and that's why this one's bigger than any past ones. Whether it's a big technology or not is to be determined. I think in some ways, many things are big technologies in retrospect.
Right.
If we think it's going to be a big technology, it might be underwhelming to our anticipation in the future, looking back at it. But, I liken it, and a lot of people would say it's as important as kind of the gun, right?
Yeah.
It changed society forever, right?
It did.
It did. And
good and bad, right?
yeah, the idea for what I heard about AI for the last so many years, we'll say let's narrow this to the cybersecurity industry, is that they couldn't keep up with the big data analysis model in cybersecurity. They were
Yeah.
collecting more data than they could analyze. They were keeping all their web traffic in big data repositories, and they needed, no human could ever go through it all. So unless you knew what you're looking for, you weren't going to find it. So every company was promising an AI type process that would solve that problem. And they've been
Yeah.
doing it for a decade now. So I think everybody was looking for this so much because it would solve all their problems. But in that logic, we've negated the other side of the gun. The gun's going to be used to protect us and good and defend our villages.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I've heard for so many years in cybersecurity. Which ones usually come quicker? Let me just put that out there. Which use of every tool that you've seen in the past comes quicker? The protection or the thwarting, the
It's
attacking?
either it's the one where they're using it for malice purpose, just like the internet itself proposed the way
That's
it was.
what I've seen too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
you have no choice but to enact said thing to prevent it from overcoming all things that are, good, I guess you could say, in a way.
Mhm.
But it seems like we're pushed into it some ways, even though we need to be disciplined about the way we use it, for sure. But yeah, it always seems like the inevitable happens to us, even if we don't want to use it. We end up using it. So the tool itself, I think AI itself is unique, something that we've never ventured into before, and now it's here, and I think people don't know what to think. I mean, it's like when the internet first showed up. What was it supposed to do? I mean, the way it came about. I think this is moving faster than the way the internet evolved, because the internet is still evolving to what it is supposed to be and how it's supposed to come about. So, I mean,
Mhm.
friend or foe, I guess, is where we're going with this, right? And cybersecurity itself is a good method to try to exploit the friend part, especially when the massive data structures that we're trying to dissect or ingest to create
Mhm.
patterns, things of that nature. At least, what do you do with AI in that sort of when you've got so much? Not even a human mind could pick up the patterns in it. So, and how
Yeah.
far do you go with it? Do you let it do all of it, which means you kind of forget your own skill and it's kind of doing the thing? Or, I mean, how far do we go? And most humans, we would go way further than we should, which then becomes a bad thing too, right? So,
Yeah.
definitely. Okay. Sorry about that. Um, we're going to have to take a break here, and we'll be right back after we hear from our sponsors.
Blockframe technology offers next-generation blockchain managed trust and security. Unique non-fungible tokens are used to secure software bills of materials to provide data quality and security for every transaction in your supply chain. Deploy advanced peer-to-peer product security, scale zero trust capability to millions of IoT devices, allow vendor tracking and accountability, and rapidly reset from compromise. Unchangeable, time-sequenced blockchain data provides next-generation security using machine learning trust algorithms and audit analytics. Start securing your supply chain today by contacting Blockframe at www.blockframetech.com.
All right, welcome back to New Cyber Frontier. I'm your host, Tim Montgomery, and today we've got Dr. Korog on, and we're talking about AI, artificial intelligence. Is it a friend or a foe? Before the break, we started discussing about cybersecurity and the tools and how the ingestion of data that current, I guess, operational centers have to ingest in order to look at certain perspectives to protect systems. And in that, um, we kind of emphasize the human aspect of how that works. And so I think there's a lot of ways that this can go bad, and there's a lot of ways that if we tame the beast, that I think that's kind of where we're going. So I mean, in your experiences, have you seen AI used in an environment like an operation center, SOC, and how has it been used?
I think the interesting thing there is that um, we're missing a tool in the operating system SOC for AI to be valuable,
Yeah,
because what we have is data collected, right? And we're going to analyze the data after we get it. So we
right.
have a big pool of data. That's what we're running AI on. What's missing is the preemptive part, that we can say what's going to happen, what's trending
Hmm.
and use that with our AI's decision endpoints. Right now, we're saying, okay, set it loose on the data and what can it do with the stuff we've already been collecting? And I
Yeah.
think um, those pieces are where the a lot of the virtual trust comes in. How do you set up trust? How do you know when you lost trust before an incident happens? And that's kind of what I'm saying about how do you say I use some kind of way of virtually trusting, knowing zero trust on who I talk to. Then I
Hmm.
know who's coming in. I've already set up some kind of identification of whether I trust them or not. I've whitelisted them. And if I do detect something, I know where that came in because I already set up trust with them. So I have some prior knowledge of where this vulnerability came in through versus just looking at data analytics and a big pool of data and trying to run your AI on it. So now
Yeah.
I want to know that this trusted source started trusting somebody before it, and that is something I can look at and say, okay, they've added risk because even though I trusted them, I see that they've trusted somebody before, that I can see who they've trusted. And I know that if something different happens, when was the last time a trust situation was changed? And start to have a preemptive way
Yeah.
to look at and something to set our AI loose on in making the decisions that isn't just a big pool of data that we can try to pick up what happened in the past.
Yeah. So you're saying AI needs to be more like sectionalized, and there's specifics that it needs to be honed in on. I mean, you can have
Saying we
multiple AIs,
need
right?
I'm saying we need other things to be able to preemptively identify trends in progress
Yeah.
instead of reactively identify what happened in the data after it happened.
Oh, so I know that there's another perspective with AI in the academics world, also with the concept of what they're saying the deep fake, right?
Mhm.
So with the deep fake concept, you've got multiple AIs working together to really render a visual of someone and the sounds of someone. So they're working hand in hand in tangent to make that function work. In other words, there's processes that are separated, and each AI is doing that, bouncing it off each other to make it as perfect as possible. Which with deep fakes, we're seeing, you know, Abe Lincoln talk to us now, so as if he was real, sitting there, right? I watched a couple of videos out there where the creator of deepfake itself, the software out there, where he was transitioning as he was talking to a person that was interviewing him, and he was transitioning into the person that was talking to him, and it looked just as real to me as as any person like me sitting here now on this video.
Mhm.
Academics, there's ways of looking at. Well, we all know Chat GPT. They'll answer a question for you. Now, how do you detect? Well, there's another AI that will go detect if that was written by an AI. And now they have a third one that says bypass AI. But now you have a third AI who's going to bypass
The
whether the
bypass.
detector. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
and that I think that's the thing that we move towards is when you have all this AI versus AI, everything just gets faster. What's needed is the authenticity, the
yeah,
attestation, the trust underneath.
trust. Yeah.
Which data do we trust? And we're going to know this in the future as elite secure data that we have identified where it comes from, who made it, and how it was made.
Yeah. All right. We're going to take a little break right there. When we get back, we'll talk about some of the solutions that might be possible. So think about that. We'll come back from our break. And we'll be right back after we hear from our sponsors. Thank you.
Blockframe Technology offers next-generation blockchain-managed trust and security. Unique non-fungible tokens are used to secure software bills of materials to provide data quality and security for every transaction in your supply chain. Deploy advanced peer-to-peer product security, scale zero trust capability to millions of IoT devices, allow vendor tracking and accountability, and rapidly reset from compromise. Unchangeable, time-sequenced blockchain data provides next-generation security using machine learning trust algorithms and audit analytics. Start securing your supply chain today by contacting Blockframe at www.blockframetech.com.
All right, welcome back to New Cyber Frontier. I'm your host, Tim Montgomery, and today we have Dr. Korog, and we're talking about artificial intelligence, whether it's a friend or foe. And before we left to the break, we talked similarly to how sectionalizing AI to create integral segments, I guess you could say, and ramping trust using that AI as we see these things go. So I know you've been on, you've traveled a lot now. There's a lot of presentations going on. So can we talk a little bit about what you're seeing out there as you go out there and you serve those events and speak on AI so far and what's coming for trends?
I've listened to a couple really good presentations and even some academic reviews, papers on AI. Some of the interesting ones, I mean, most of the events you hear, um, how can I use it? How can I make money off of it? How can I monetize it? What does this do for me? How can I stop my students from using it? All the answers look the same and they all look generated from AI and students saying, wow, I don't even have to do any work anymore. I did my homework on AI in 3 minutes and it used to take me hours. Um, and it's like a new cat and mouse game added to industry use cases. What are people doing with it? How can I use it for my business? How can I use it to generate leads is a big one you hear everybody talking about. And that's kind of the first use is those surface area. Um,
Yeah.
but I heard a paper presented at a conference that was very interesting in the way that people are faking out AI. And the thought process here is AI is learning based on data. So what data
Yeah.
makes it learn something new? Can we mimic that process, put that data in front of it, and make my AI algorithm present something to everybody as new or authentic information that I fabricated? And literally they showed the way to do this.
Yeah.
AI, the language model looks at several reference sources on the internet. The more different sources it finds linking to the same conversation that verify the same information, the more
Hmm.
valid that information becomes. So literally they did a process where they dynamically generated a couple Wikipedia pages talking about a totally fabricated topic, made a blog page and an article on a free blog for news, talk
Hmm.
about the same topic in 30 seconds or a couple nanoseconds. They created all these blogs with an algorithm, then triggered the AI and referenced these distributed resources and basically made the AI a global AI chat GPT. Every time it come up with somebody's name, it said how terrible this person is as part of their name. And if you search their name, it would say, yes, this person is very terrible and the worst person for doing this. And this was a negative kind of a slander on somebody that
Sure.
it was just to test that they could do this. But it also, this will be used in marketing. You will pay a
Yeah.
company to put something in front of AI in 30 seconds, get everybody in the world to get the same thing that does this search. And for the next 30 minutes until it heals itself, everybody in the world will be put your tag in front of their face.
Yeah. Yeah. A
And
disinformation campaign.
it's possible because the AI learns.
Yeah, it is. And the more disinformation you put out there, the more the AI will trend towards what we would consider not truth.
But they showed how this is done. There's now public or academic publications showing how this is possible and how the language model inside reclassifies and tags new resources as viable things to produce. And you can put a series of those in front of it in nanoseconds and have it change its whole what it's putting out to millions of people, users on it at the same time, because it puts
So
it into its memory.
suppose that you have an AI that gives you a response. Now you have to have multiple AIs to give the same response in order for that response to be considered true. And I'm assuming that's kind of where this idea, this concept could be
That's what they're
going.
doing.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. They're basically, now that they have AI tell a million people that this person's name comes up with is a terrible right-wing Republican, we'll say, or
Yeah.
whatever, you know, left-wing, I don't know, right or left, I always get mixed up, but is whatever, and it's something entirely different than what they are, right?
Yeah.
And now a million people using ChatGPT that type in their name get the same thing. And now, because it's tagged as relevant and this is coming up more frequently, it gets added more frequently to responses from GPT.
Yeah.
So it is a big data simulation learning model that can be forcibly directed and has been proven to do so.
Right. And that outcome is to lean something to the left or right, like voting, right? Could be used that way.
Public opinion,
Opinion.
or
Right.
all that those things that come out of public opinion now are, at this point, it's all public opinion. It's going out to individuals who are, oh, neat, we're trying this. But eventually that gets fed into all kinds of decisions made, new documents put in, journals published, reference material. Where does it go? How do we know what pieces of data are viable, trusted, and what
Right.
aren't? Kind of goes back to when I said security. To use AI needs another piece. AI needs the piece of being able to tell whether data is valid or not. And that piece is missing from the world in general. And like I
Yeah.
said, we'll know that in the future as Elite Secure. We've made our data elite, and we provably that it can be secure in its integrity, or it's
Yeah.
in its ideals, or in its message, or the collection of data that AI uses is 97% elite secure data that its decision can be proved or relatively more provable based on that. And now its resultant data is a 97% elite secure because its usage of that data. But the classification and the value, the quality of data, as it's known of as and now in most industries and evolving, is an important key feature to feeding in the continuous learning models.
So when you say elite data, elite trust, are you referring to that? Maybe I missed it somewhere, but what exactly are you referring to when you say those things?
I'm saying to data that is trusted to have integrity, to be
Yeah.
created by the user who named it, to
Mhm.
be from the source that it came from, that it's not a deep fake. It actually is the person that released it. They
Yeah.
tag it as elite secure data.
Well, what kind of solutions do you think are out there today that plausibly could support such a thing? Can you think of any?
um Evolving as
No.
we speak. It's
Right.
one of the things that individualization of security leads to, is the
Yeah.
ability to individualize and prove data is secure, integrous, trusted from a particular source, touched and operated by a particular source, the lineage of it over time even.
Yeah. And that kind of goes back to what a blockchain is possible, or a blockchain comes in.
Blockchain is a tool that
Right.
sets up a positive forensic chain. So, yes, that forensic chain of provable information is a viable combination for doing this.
Yeah. Um, we talked a little bit about how deep fakes. I mean, the evolution of AI is rapidly moving. So one will outtrend the other, I'm assuming, at some point, if we don't do something to taper it. And so we're talking about tools that are possible, but we may never get there because we may end up, corrupting the disinformation evolves into corruption, which then we kind of lose information entirely.
Mhm.
So, I mean, do you see aspects like that that's inevitable?
I think we're going to go through a phase where millions of pieces of data will come in front of us, like already is, and
Yeah,
we won't be able to trust or know whether we can trust any of them. And it's going to be a couple years of that, and reach a critical mass before we just start looking for, we only look for trusted sources. And it's a new paradigm shift that, but we're first going to get to, the pool's going to be so muddy that we can't know whether we trust anything,
right.
and just coming faster and faster. That's the only sure thing that you see with AI, is that the data will come faster and faster.
Yeah.
What the value of that data, whether you can rely on it, and whether it helps you or not, are, we'll just say, questions to be seen with time. But what's for sure is data is going to come faster.
And do you see that as a human beings, if they don't have to think, like for me, I don't have to think about phone numbers. I used to memorize every phone number in my book.
Yeah.
Now I'm using a phone and I can't remember one to save my life. So yeah, I have to go back and look at the phone, right? And a lot of times it's got a name on it, which is okay, but I don't remember the phone number and won't remember it off the top of my head. Or when
Yeah.
I did pick up a phone, I actually have to push the buttons. Even the tones helped me figure out the combination, right? It was not
Yeah.
only visual, but it was
You could
also
listen
audio.
to it.
Right. It was kinetic in a lot of ways. And in
Yeah.
this way, virtualizing stuff no longer becomes a kinetic factor or a
Yeah.
visual. I mean, there's visual aid, audio aid there, but technically you can't tangibly touch it anymore. And with an AI evolving the way it is, you potentially see how this thing could actually inevitably remove, you know, the way the mind works and transition into something else.
I definitely see that it becomes a crutch. If you don't have to think, you're not going to, like you said, with the phone numbers.
Right.
Um, but at the same time, I think that the thing I mentioned before could become more predominant. That the data becomes so unpredictable that if you, every time you ask for Tim Montgomery's phone number, it gives you a different number, you stop relying on it.
Yeah.
So I think that is just as possible scenario outcome as that it's going to give you valid data that you're not going to have to think about anymore and be able to use. The
Yeah.
only thing it's going to be assured is there's more data and it's faster and there's more things able to be done with it.
So AI itself technically will end up becoming, more or less. I mean, inevitably, when we get that far into the future, and however fast that comes, you really look at problems that one can solve a lot of problems, but it also inevitably is going to get into other problems, like most of humanity, it seems like.
Is it a problem
With
or does it
that,
help us? Does it help us? There could be, I mean, think about if it's like a dream world, right? If
yeah.
I'm dreaming, your brain puts all kinds of scenarios in front of you, and your dreams can be all different directions sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
So now let's say a situation is happening in real time, and 10 different AI algorithms are predicting future, or 100 or 1,000 predicting
Mhm.
future outcomes, right? And
Mhm.
you have a collage of different outcomes ahead of you, and you have which ones are the most viable that the reality or the line of direction heads into. I mean, it could be that neural network type of feature
Yeah.
that is like living a dream, that we sometimes get our best direction from dreaming and coming up with the a viable conclusion so many times in our thought process that we do it and it works. That may be the trend, but
Well, it
the
also
only thing
brings
for
the
sure is
idea.
that it's going to speed up and there's going to be more there.
Yeah.
Um, can humans keep up with it? I know I get dizzy just keeping up with all the stuff coming through Twitter. I can't watch those continuously. And we get inundated with information. So I think it adds to the problem I call a simulative paradox.
Yeah.
That is, there's so much information coming in, and people want to absorb all the information before they act, and they never end up acting because they're still caught in
Absorbing.
a paradox of
Yeah.
assimilating.
Continuous
I'll
absorbing.
act when I get all the details. they're
Right.
never going to act. And I think it speeds that up and makes it even more the inability to act because of too many potential scenarios to act on.
Yeah, and that brings me to a predictable outcome and whether you can trend it to giving the outcome you want, let alone an outcome that's just going to be an outcome. I mean, the idea is if you get enough trending factors, you can say that's the one I want versus that's the one that's inevitably going to be the one that comes out. So now are you inevitably making things happen through that process? I mean, you can get into all kinds of different factors when we talk about how this could go on and on and on. The reality is, I don't think, I mean, how slow is legislation? I mean, you talk about the concept of
Legislation
the autonomy
will
of a
never be
car.
ahead. Legislation
Yeah,
will never be ahead.
yeah,
I think technology can get ahead if there's something that makes this neural network possible, but legislation will never be ahead. They'll always be behind.
yeah. And then that goes on to saying AI is now creating the legislation on itself.
Yeah, I think legislation usually needs to be done after jurisprudence is set, and I don't like what what came up with the jurisprudence decision. So it has to
Yeah,
go to the wrong way, get a court to be involved, get the Security and Exchange Commission making decisions, get some panel saying you've done the wrong thing, and then that decision influences legislation to be put in place. That's, I think, historically the trend of any new new technology being actually managed in any way by a society.
yeah. The other idea that I think of is we run out of ideas. The AI did it. AI trends and makes and creates. So therefore, it influences our imagination.
Hmm.
It inevitably takes us over at some points because we don't have the gift of art anymore
Yeah.
or creating our own anymore.
Well, and I'll tell you an example of that, and I did some reviews for, so we'll say, some of the top scientific minds putting in proposals on what should be addressed, and I read a 75-page proposal
Mhm.
on that basically said humans could never do cybersecurity. We're going to let ChatGPT do it.
That's so you've taken the whole process of the judgment of a human out of the whole entire thing, just about, and then the manipulation of information that's current. You're going to allow that to be the justification, whatever that comes up with, because the AI is going to absorb that information and that's going to trend that factor.
Yeah.
So
I think I'm done with today. That's all I have to say right there. What after I read that, I was a little bit disheartened about, the objective of maybe even some of the top scientists, as data scientists, saying, "Oh, well, people try to do cybersecurity, they'll never get it right. AI can do it."
that's like saying let AI decide whether or not we need to launch a nuke. At least in my mind, make the ultimate decision on whether or not society should be in place or not. Anyway, we've gone down those paths, haven't we?
We have.
I certainly think that AI's